All right.
Okay.
Well, we're super excited about today. We have Lawrence Ballenger as our guest. Lawrence is like one of my true, like, dear friends. Like, we've known each other for years, right?
Going on to almost 10 now.
Almost 10 years.
That's a long time.
A long time.
I was young when I met you.
You know, but one thing about Lawrence is, like, he's just as happy now as he was then. Just one of the most amazing, like, dear people I've ever met. And also a great athlete as well. At the same, and great entrepreneur, outstanding entrepreneur.
I'm glad this is on the record right now so I can replay this to my mom.
So, like, Lawrence, like, you've done a lot of things. You've competed in physique. You've competed in, played an elite level in football.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've competed even at elite level like CrossFit, strongman. You know, all across the board, you've had success, and you've had a really long career actually. Mm-hmm. So, what got you into like physique sports in general?
Actually, I didn't like physique sports at the beginning. What got me into it was I wasn't playing any more sports, and I wanted to still be competitive in something and train for something. And 10 years ago, there wasn't much on the table. I was eating a pack of donuts at the time, and a friend of mine was like, why don't you hop on this bodybuilding.com like fitness competition? I was like, I know nothing about this. So I pulled up a few things off of Muscle and Fitness, looked it up, I was like, okay, I think I can do this. Took a fit picture like an hour later, then they called me back and said you made the top 10 a week later.
Wow.
And flew me out to Boise. And then I met Michael Hearn that same week, and he gave me a few pointers while I was out there, and I got second place. And I was like, oh, this isn't that bad,
Wow.
Not too hard. So let's try to make a job out of this.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. And you've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Opened up a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities for me.
That's outstanding. So obviously you're like you are bodybuilder, physique athlete. Like I said, you play football, but you're also an entrepreneur, and you've actually had a lot of success throughout the years doing it. And you've been adaptable. I've seen you adapt and consult for a number of companies. All of those companies have been happy. Like as an entrepreneur, like what would you there's a lot of kids I'm sure who have really good physiques, but they want to make a career in this industry. What tips do you have for them for that?
You are your best salesman. Most people try to have a brand want to come to them, but they have nothing to give to the brand or give back. And I think that's the number one thing of adapting is understanding what you have to give back to a brand and to your followers and your consumers, because your followers are not just someone that's just going to buy from you or trust you instantly. You need to show them that this is the real version of you and show what you can actually do to help someone versus seeing what you're going to get back from it right away. And I think that's a way to live life. See what you can give other people, because you'll always make 10x back somewhere down the road. That's
key, man. That's key. And I think the most successful people I've met have that philosophy. Like it's all about value, adding value to other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome, man. When we talk about like, you know, a lot of people, a lot of young guys are going to want to know like, man, I want to look like Lawrence Ballenger. You know what I mean? So from a training perspective, you know, a general philosophy on like your training, like what would you say? What's your overall training philosophy?
I think my overall training philosophy is like a power bodybuilding, because bodybuilding, I love it. It's a great way to train and kind of bring out your artistic way of shaping and growing your body, but as well as who wants to be big and weak?
Yeah.
Like that's one of my things as well. It's like, well, if I'm going to be a larger guy, I want to be strong as well. But when people see you big and strong, you're like, well, you still can't move. So growing up as an athlete, I always wanted to keep somewhat of a athletic background. So as I get older, I can run, jump, and still, when that day comes, hopefully it's still a few years away, have a kid in a family that I'm able to grow up with them and still take on regular activities and kind of make this not just a 5 to 10 year span inside of a fitness field, but to make it actually a lifestyle that I can, you know, keep going over the years.
That's awesome. So when you talk, let's go into those things. So do you divide your training like cycle? Say you're doing like an 8-week training cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Do you divide that into phases where you do focus more on like bodybuilding, then you focus on strength and then power? Do you put them all together? How do you generally, like right now you're getting ready to do, you know, an 8-week mass cycle.
Mm-hmm.
How do you divide those up?
When I'm doing a serious mass cycle, it's actually phases where you're trying to get up your tendon strength and build up some endurance. So when you get to the heavy phase of the program, that you're actually able to lift heavier without being so exhausted, and you still have a little bit of cardiovascular strength. because I never really want to fully lose that cardiovascular strength where you're only able to do 5 reps and the weight's not heavy, you're just gassed and you can't actually just breathe. If you can actually have enough oxygen in the muscle, you can probably do a lot more. So I never want to fully lose that, and that's one thing that I always want to incorporate into the training.
That's awesome. So talk to us about that. Let's say like someone's like, okay, cool. What is Lawrence's like bodybuilding, conditioning, cardiovascular type training style? What does that look like? Like,
it's definitely no cardio. I can promise you that.
all right. But the thing is, I know this is funny is that most people I've ever seen training with you are gassed. So like what? So how does that look?
Well, like we talked about earlier, one thing I really like is like monster sets or pre-exhausting, something where you have to do a lot of reps inside the workout. Most people's workouts are between 100 and 300 reps for the whole hour to hour and a half span. I like to do 200 or 300 reps within the first 15 minutes or the last 15 minutes.
Wow.
And it just really shows your endurance. And it also just kind of makes you mentally strong, because I think that's one thing that people forget when they're training is keeping the intensity and really pushing your body to the limit. And sets like that, I think, help your cardiovascular and just your mental strength of, I can work past this. I'm stronger than this. This is just a temporary pain versus an actual like breaking down of actual hurting yourself.
Wow. So now when you do that, let's say you're doing the first 15 minutes, you might do like 200 reps in the first 15 minutes. How many sets do you usually cover that over?
It depends on my goal. So sometimes if it's more strength wise, it might be 6 to 7 sets. But if we're just really going at it like a monster sets, it'll be like 4.
Wow.
3 to 4 sets.
Wow, that's incredible.
But the the time under tension is probably 6 minutes a set, 5 minutes a set. And then most people are gassed and they never even make it to the rest of the workout, or they never come back.
Exactly. Now I remember like when we talked about this when we did some filming yesterday. But for people who haven't seen that, like talk about some of the intensification methods that you get to 100 reps. Like when you talk about like you like power bomb type sets.
Yes.
Talk about that. Like that's one of the most brutal techniques that I've ever seen. And the first time you showed it to me was on lat pull downs.
Oh yeah, that one hurts.
It hurts.
So powerball sets are by far, I think, my favorite, just because it shows your power output throughout the whole exercise. We start like a light weight, and then you do 10 reps, and then you slowly increase it on the machine over and over again until you can't hit 10. But most people would stop at that point, but we fully restart at the starting point and do it as many times as possible until you can't move the pin more than 2 or 3 racks. And it takes so long once you get adapted to the actual workout that you're underneath the machine for 5, 7, sometimes 10 minutes. And most people are just totally gassed by that point.
That's crazy.
The metabolic like response that you get that next day of the cell swelling, like you still have a pump probably 2 to 3 days later, and it just looks great. But once you go to normal workouts, you start lifting heavier, doing 3 or 4 reps for 2 to 3 seconds means nothing.
Wow. That's good. And that's one of the things I think that's really amazing about your conditioning. You always have that veiny, vascular look.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet, you bet. And we were obviously we did this huge testing with you in the lab, and I think sometimes people have this perception of like bodybuilding or hardcore elite bodybuilding is not being healthy. And listen, it can be to a point where it's not healthy. But when we looked at like your measures, for example, your vascular function, like your artery function was amazing. You had these buoyant, elastic arteries. Your blood pressure was perfect. So, but you don't do cardio, so people are like, oh, you know, how can that be? How can you have this really strong cardiovascular conditioning? But I don't think people understand the fact that you are in great cardiovascular shape because you're doing such high volume training. And it leads to that, the vascularity, the conditioning, the great, you know, your ability to handle calories, process calories. So I think that's important to understand from a lot of people is how important that is to training.
I think most people don't actually train at a high enough intensity throughout their workouts, or they follow a plan that isn't customized to them. I think a lot of people need to find plans that help them actually achieve their goal versus just copying and pasting what another person does, because it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes you need to know what other intensification methods you can use to actually help yourself achieve your goals and kind of keep your intensity going all the way through your workout.
Right now, speaking of intensification methods, we talk about on this bodybuilding phase, this high rep, high volume phase, we talked a lot about when you're training, for example, with these power sets or these high volume sets. What are some other intensification methods what are your favorite? What are your top 3 in the bodybuilding phase to get high volume?
High volume. Number 1 be power ball. Number 2 would be monster sets. That's something that I think not enough people incorporate. It's adding just almost like an AMRAP type of deal to your workout, because it forces you to keep a certain pace and it forces you to really push yourself. And I think that's just something that most people really don't do. It's a mental aspect. They always hold something for the next workout or for the next day or for the next rep, but for why? Yeah. So you can, pardon my French, it's a big dick show at the gym. Right. And you're just like, what am I doing this for? Yeah. Am I actually using the weights in this process to actually gain muscle and gain size and get the body style that I'm looking for? Or are you just trying to show off for the girl at the gym that doesn't even notice you anyway? Right.
Right. Exactly. Right. Let's go into the psychology of things, right? The one thing I have noticed about you is like, no matter what, you're always in a really good mood, and you interpret things like in a positive light. So I give everyone an example. We have Charlie. Everyone knows Charlie, but he basically got for ASPI these bars, and these bars basically like the grip on them.
Oh, those are sweet.
Yeah, right. You say they're sweet, and they're like spikes. You know what I mean? Like, I swear to God, people cut their hands on them. Like, if you Paul who does our marketing, he squats really heavy weight, and he just has scars on his back on them.
Those are war wounds.
Yeah, exactly right. And everybody's like has told Charlie, like a lot of members who train, like, hey Charlie, can you get ones that don't feel like spikes? And you're the first guy who came in, and we're like, wow, I really like these. Where did I get these bars, right? So, what is it? How can you be happy or like push through this and still keep such a positive attitude when clearly when you're trained like that, you have to sometimes be in agony. So what's that mindset?
Well, as everyone knows, like, change comes from a discomfort place. So if you're not in an uncomfortable place, you're probably not growing in any aspect of life. So if it's not challenging, it's not hard, it's not rough, quote unquote, you're not getting any better. You're not progressing. You're not challenging yourself. So I want everything in life to be difficult.
Gotcha.
Everything in life to be rough and somewhat hard. Because if there's no pain, that's obviously, for me, personally, I don't think you're moving anywhere forward. You're not trying hard enough.
That's a great point. That's a really great point.
And then you have to be happy, because why not be happy?
Yeah.
If you're wanting to change yourself and become better every single day in every aspect, that's the reason you wake up in the morning, is to progress. So why not wake up happy that you have another day to prove yourself? And yesterday might have been a slight failure, but work harder the next day. There's always another day to prove yourself.
Agreed, 100%. So now, before physique, you played football. Talk about that. Talk about your football days and what you learned in training there.
I played a little bit of college football. Training was intense, but the mental aspect was not positive for me. It was a very... I love football. Don't get me wrong. Anybody that's watching this, I love it. And I support you guys fully. But for me, it put me in a very angry place to where I wasn't happy. And my training derived from an anger spot. So if I wasn't angry, I couldn't lift heavy. If I wasn't angry, I couldn't do something. But I loved the football style training because it made you commit to something on a daily basis. And you're able to work with other like-minded individuals that are going for the same goal of stronger, faster for the team. And that was my favorite thing, because we worked together. So when you're going to the gym, you're doing workouts together and pushing each other. And that's the aspect I like to take when I go to the gym now. Is when I work out with somebody, I want us to grow from each other, learn from each other, and push each other. Gotcha. It's a competition against each other, but at the same time, there's a camaraderie of, I want to push you into a competition so you don't slack, and I want you to give it your all to try to beat me, and vice versa.
That makes sense. Now, what switched that mindset where, like, as I understand,
concussions.
Concussion. I know the same thing. I had the same feeling. Like when I played hockey, I definitely got a few concussions. It does change.
And you're like, I was like, I'm not that good to go pro. So what's this concussion going to do? And I'm not that smart off the bat anyway. I can't lose any more brain cells.
I totally understand, man. I 100% understand. And then speaking of that, but you switch from like you lift with anger and now you lift positive happy. So what is it? What was that switch?
That switch was just, I guess, more inside of myself when I realized you don't have to be angry to do anything. Everything could come from a positive place. Like sometimes people will find out what music I'm listening to, and it's more relaxed than I think anybody will ever guess some days. I'll go from a serious hip hop to half the time I'm listening like Maroon 5 or
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but like a Jason Derulo or just something like super
Yeah.
chill. I'm like, I don't have to be angry. I can be
That's
happy,
awesome.
smile, because if you really want something, the moment of you actually need to lift, you should be able to flip your switch and instantly be able to focus on the task at hand. Especially
Right.
if you're doing a reps of 8 to 10, you should be able to focus for 8 to 10 seconds.
That's true.
And then I pop up like, okay, did we do it? Sweet, let's have fun again.
That's a really good point. Now, with someone who's like accomplished as much you've accomplished, in athletics and even as an entrepreneur, because, I mean, a lot of people watching this, if you follow like your career, their dream is just to get one sponsorship, and you've had multiple, right? You've developed a really great physique and everything, but you're just a nice guy. And so I've noticed a lot of guys who have social media and different followers, and they're bigger, like I said, they can be dicks. You know what I mean? So what's kept you so positive and happy?
Well, when I was growing up and you look up to like certain individuals and then you actually meet them, and let's say you go to an expo or you meet them on the street, it doesn't take much to make a person feel important. So that 10 seconds to say hi, that 5 seconds to ask them what their name is and actually be intrigued about their life, it isn't a I'm the shit type of deal. It's more of a I respect you as a human. You're not a follower, because I think that's such a harsh term. It's like you're not really just following me, because I'm giving this content out to help.
Yeah.
And that's why you never see me charge for content. That's why you don't see any paid post on my page, because I don't care about the monetary value as much as giving back to the community.
That's huge.
And if most people kind of live their life that way, they would be able to reap more from their sponsors versus trying to reap more from their actual followers. Because I feel like followers are equity in themselves. Because if someone takes the time to follow you and watch your boring ass day, watch you make your silly ass meals, that means a lot. Like my content, I put effort into it, but the fact that you watch my content, you take time out of your own personal day to watch what I'm doing, I should take time out of my day if I see you to say hi. If you want to walk up and say hi. I've had tons of followers walk up and say, hey, I love what you do on IG. Okay, if we're at the gym, would you like to work out with me?
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to work out with somebody. They might slow you down for 10 seconds. It might not be your best lift, but that memory to them for that one workout is a million times more. So I'd rather give back just a little bit, because when you were not popular, you weren't in that limelight, you would have loved someone to do that for you.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge. Now we talked about your bodybuilding style training, and when you're, for example, when you're getting ready to do this cycle here, how many weeks does that typically last? If you're gonna gain mass for 8 weeks, how long will you keep that cycle before you switch to the strength?
I'll keep the mass building cycle for probably 4, maybe 8 weeks max. I don't like to add too much mass to my body where the ratio can be torn apart, where you're adding more fat than you're adding more muscle. Because
Right.
once you start breaking that fat to muscle ratio, I'm going to have to lose the fat sooner or later. So I kind of stop after about a solid 8 weeks.
Okay,
And then
good.
I slowly dwindle it back down to like my normal, quote unquote, workouts.
Oh, that's great. Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. I think sometimes people go on like 20-week bulks.
I'm like, no, you're just being lazy for 20 weeks.
Yeah.
I've been lazy for a year. I understand.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And then they spend so much time cutting, they lose everything that was on their bulk, and they're miserable. And also, I think people start to lose their pumps when they go like longer than 8 weeks. They lose the vascularity, the pumps, all that stuff.
I think sometimes you lose the real goal and intention of your bulking as well when you take too much time, because you're like, okay, well, I can slack on my diet, I can slack on my workouts because I have X amount of time.
Right.
It's really not that serious. You should take your bulk just as serious as you take your cutting phase, and that's what some people misunderstand. If you're really taking your body serious for whatever program you're doing, take it serious.
Agreed. Now, your strength power phase, right? Is that one phase, or is it in combination, or are they separate?
I like them to be in combination if possible. So I like to gain the size and strength somewhat proportionally.
Yep.
So as my muscle bellies grow, they grow dense. And as I cut, they don't shrink down as much. So You'll see a lot of people like bulking to get that poofy look,
Yep.
and then that muscle just doesn't stay because it's just such new thin muscle that once you diet down, kind of breaks down with the fat.
Yep.
But if you're able to add that thick type 2 slow twitch muscle fibers where it's just hard and dense in there, that just doesn't go away. But it does take a lot more time to grow.
Right, I got you. So on your strength phases, what does that look? You talked about your high volume bodybuilding phase. What does a strength day or a strength phase look like for you?
So like a normal strength day will start off with something that is like a monster set, because the older I get, the more I need to warm up my joints, my tendons, and kind of get some blood inside that muscle. And most people might say that is not optimal because you're doing too many reps and you might be burning out some of your power. But for me, it works. And then we'll go into the heavy compound movements of 5 sets of 5 or 5 sets of 3, something of that nature, where you're doing heavy deadlifts, heavy squats, heavy bench press, just some of the core lifts or shoulder press to really get some of that core thickness. And just, I like moving heavy weights sometimes just to feel like a man still.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. And that's interesting that you say that about you're not losing that bodybuilding conditioning style, because there's good research where they took guys and they did like a bodybuilding phase, and then they went to a pure strength phase where they did like sets of 5, and then another group did that, but they also kept like that slight burnout type of high volume rep stuff in there. And you would think like people will go like, oh yeah, that's dumb that you combine them. But the people who combine them like you gained more strength and more size.
Really?
And the people who were just training for strength, they didn't get as strong and they lost muscle. So I think that you're sustaining what you gained during that bodybuilding phase while you're gaining strength. And I think people need to understand that. A lot of times people go to pure powerlifting phases and they lose all the conditioning that they got in the bodybuilding phase. They lose the vascularity, the fullness of the muscle. So they lose that, even though they're gaining density, they're losing all those other attributes.
And then how much time does that take you to set back to get back to where you were?
Long
I
time.
feel like it's just this juggling effect of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and you're just really always playing this weird catch-up game where nobody gains much muscle mass. Most people that I know probably only gain 2 to 5 pounds, but they're training extremely hard all year long and nothing's really going their way.
Yep. It's that juggling act. So here's the thing, like one thing about you, I said one of your biggest strengths is probably like you're symmetrical, especially as a physique athlete. And actually, but you're highly symmetrical, you know, from bottom to top. So, you know, normally if we're doing an interview, you might just pick like 1 or 2 body parts. But what I kind of want to do is your quick off the cuff tip on like, I'm gonna pick a body part and you tell me your one tip.
Okay.
Someone wants to grow on that body part. Give us a tip on it. So, you know, let's talk about biceps. What would you do there? Like, we give a quick tip off the cuff.
Quick tip off the cuff, isolated bicep curls. That I think like a like a single arm preacher curl is great to fully like lengthen the muscle. Most people don't actually, if you notice, they do like these little half curls.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is this? They don't fully extend. And I think most people on all their lifts get a full stretch. Number 1. If you're squatting, if you don't have a lot of pain or there's not any real physical issues, ask the grass. Actually learn how to do a real squat and actually break parallel. I know you don't have to, but that stretch that you get, especially in the teardrop area or in that hip displacement, like that really helps you grow really thick, nice thighs. Or like when you're doing biceps, fully stretched triceps. Like most people are asking me all the time, how do you get your triceps so large? I do dips. And when I don't do half-ass dips, go fully down, slow, get a good stretch, stop your muscles from bouncing, and actually fully extend. Stop for a second. Not full lockout, keep all the tension on the muscle, and just slow and controlled, versus for speed, just to show everybody how fast you can do it or how many reps because you're bouncing.
That's interesting. And that's one of the things I think there's a strength of yours. When we were watching you yesterday, we were filming advanced training variables, intensification, and your range of motion is always full. You know, it's like even when you're doing squats, like you said, it's ass to grass. You pause on the bottom, and you can see it like with the teardrop that you have in your quads. Now, it's interesting because like most people don't really know, muscles get thicker, but also you can add like size like longitudinally, at least, even though you can't make the muscle elongate, you can kind of make it fuller. Where you can't change the insertion point, you can make it fuller near the insertion point, and that seems to occur with like that lengthening contraction. And so maybe that's a big part of what you've had success with your arms.
I think it stops a lot of injuries too, because once you have the full stretch, you don't have to worry about the bounce back effect, or if you stretch too much, you rip and tear a muscle because it's not used to being under that much stress, especially like when you're lifting heavier.
Yep.
So that's a reason I like to do high weights or high reps with full stretch, just so as your body's getting used to adding a lot of load, you can add it even at the what would be the best way of saying, like the highest tension point, I guess.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So now, one thing we were talking about actually this morning, some of your goals, you said 2 of the body parts you're looking to make grow the most right now are your pecs and your quads.
Yes.
So what are you going to do for your pecs? Give us, since that's going to be a main focus, what are 3 top things you're going to do for your pecs?
So for my pecs, for size-wise, I'm going to do a lot of extra cables. I kind of drifted away from using cables as much, but I'm going to do a lot more flies to really just isolate just my chest. Because as you guys probably see on camera, my arms usually dominate 90% of my exercises. So I have to figure out other ways to kind of take out my triceps, take out the shoulders, and take out the secondary muscles. So cables is a great way for myself, or pec deck flies. It's going to be another way I just get a full stretch. And the main focus is not on the weight, but just contracting the muscle, get a good squeeze, and just using the tools that I have available to grow versus just, all right, today I'm gonna push 200 pounds.
Gotcha. Because a lot of guys want to get big chests, and the only thing they focus on is just, I'm gonna get my bench up and up and up and up. And the first thing you're talking about is, I'm gonna actually focus on my chest. And I think that is a key difference between bodybuilding and powerlifting. You know, they're related, but they're not the same thing.
I agree.
And I think that's a big point to that. What about your quads? What are you gonna give us a tip there?
So quads, I'm actually going to. So I hurt my. I tore my groin in a little freak accident. You guys probably actually see the video. It's on Brute Strength. And I was doing an upright row. Well, not upright row. I was supposed to be doing a power clean, but it ended up just being a heavy ass upright row. And I tore my quad trying to jerk it up, or I tore my groin trying to jerk it up, and now I can't squat the same as comfortable, but unless I set something underneath my heels. But that also helps with the development inside of my quads.
Brilliant. That's great.
So I'm going to use some band techniques and some stuff I picked up from your whole team. You guys have helped me out a lot on rechanging my plan.
That's awesome.
And mostly squats and some extra leg extensions to really bring out like the feathers and some extrations.
Well, that's a great point too. The fact that, and I think you getting into that, you're very good at using angles. You know, I think most people, they just do squats like, oh, it's just going to squat. And what they do is they just walk out, they get in the same stance, and they do the same stance for years and years. And here you are, you're progressing. You're like, I'm changing it up. I'm going to focus on my quads, and I'm going to do an elevation technique. What would you do if you were doing squats to emphasize the glutes and hamstrings?
I would go a little bit wider of a stance, and still it's depth and squeezing with your glutes and coming up. I think a lot of activation can come just from the mental aspect of the mind-muscle connection. If you're not squeezing that muscle and just moving the weight, you're not really focusing on the task at hand. You're becoming a power lifter versus a bodybuilder.
Makes sense.
And I think that's just the mindset. Whenever I'm doing something for just growth in general, then I'm focusing on squeezing that muscle and keeping the tension on that muscle. Even through the stretch in the eccentric phase, I'm really focusing on keeping tension and some type of contraction still going.
Gotcha.
So it never fully relaxes. So once it relaxes, I feel like that almost ends the workout, and then you're starting back over from scratch.
That makes sense. Now, does your training volume differ between your lower body and upper body in general? Or
no. Every workout I like to do almost at least 400 to 500 reps throughout the whole workout, no matter what. Even if it's a power day, just because I don't want to be a bitch.
That's great, man. That's awesome. That is awesome. So okay. What about obviously shoulders? Shoulders. What are your top tips for that?
Shoulders
and traps. Shoulders and traps.
You know what? I don't think enough people do upright rows. Just because you can change the angle, you get a great cap from upright rows if you do them correctly, and closer in, you're getting more traps. Closer in, you're getting more traps. Wider out, you're getting more of your shoulder caps. So I try to do 2 sets of each, and it's gave me great development over the a year and a half that I've been doing it, and it just really changes your thickness of your physique because you can go a little bit heavier, and it just makes it so difficult, and you really don't feel that type of stress just by doing a shrug.
Good point. That's a really good point. And what about like yesterday? Probably one of the best clips we got of you was on the pull-ups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just great definition in the back, lats, rhomboids, just a lot of great detail in there. And so back's really complex. How do you attack such a complex muscle in your training?
Actually, back gets usually 2 days. One for like my rhomboids and traps, and I kind of throw that into my shoulder day. And then the other one is another thickness day where it kind of falls in with my deadlifts. I'm starting to deadlift more now just so I can get a little thicker of back. And I think just a deadlift day and a leg day for me just don't match up, but deadlifts and a heavy row day matches very well for me.
Interesting.
It creates a great thickness, and it's not taken away from my leg day. So it's just strictly back, even though deadlifts aren't strictly back. But that rhomboid roll really helps with the thickness in between my shoulder blades, and just it feels like it helps with the width as well.
Gotcha. That's interesting. So now when you're doing like deadlifts and then rows, how do you sequence those? Do you start the workout off with deadlifts and then go to rows? How do you sequence?
Rows are always first for me because I'm able to get a better contraction and a mind-muscle connection. I like to start off anything that I can get the best squeeze possible, and then go into the heavier compound movement because the squeeze for me isn't as tense because it kind of goes over my whole body versus just one specific area.
And then, so do you notice with that sequence that you're filling in a lot more in that area when you move to the deadlift?
Oh yeah, you could definitely fill in your deadlifts, and you could feel the activation a lot more, so you can feel exactly your movement, because that's like what I'm most concerned about is the movement of my body while I'm moving the weight versus just the full contraction, because I want to make sure everything's moving evenly.
Yeah.
So I realize as years go on, you get injuries that you don't really notice, and there's a lot of imbalances inside your body as you train, especially if you're only doing compound movements and you're not isolating and trying to keep each side of your body equal.
Gotcha. So what are your, having obviously playing football, being a physique sport for so long, a lot of guys just don't have the longer careers, and they're messed up by the time they get to your point. And I could tell yesterday, like, we put 225 in the bar and squats, and you just get under there and just start squatting full range of motion. Most guys who have been training as long as you, their knees would hurt tremendously. It would take, 20 minutes just to warm up to that. Not because the weight's ridiculously heavy for them, because their joints are so hurt. So what are your top tips to stay away from injury?
Top tips, stretching. Number one, stretching hasn't been huge for me, but as I've been getting older, it's become a lot more important. Now I do yoga every morning, and I noticed that I wake up a lot better. I just wake up feeling loose. And if anybody's worked out for years, you sound like a wooden roller coaster when you wake up, and shit, it might take you 10 minutes before you can walk to the bathroom because you need to move around a little bit. But yoga's actually helped my tendon strength and my tendon flexibility. So because the weight's not heavy, 225 isn't too heavy for a squat. 99% of people can do that. But just waking up to be able to just set it on your back and just go into it definitely equates to stretching. And then a good diet. When I first met you 10 years ago, I was eating super horrible. I still eat bad, but I was eating horrible. And once we got into ketogenic, and I was doing that for like 5 years, I realized a lot of things that affect me. Like I can't do a lot of carbs or my joints start swelling up. I can't take tomatoes. Tomatoes are horrible for me. They cause a lot of inflammation for my joints. And over the years, you don't think it does much, but the more years you can stop taking those impurities inside your body makes it a lot easier as you get older to function.
That's interesting. Now, you have had a lot of success doing ketogenic dieting. A big question that everyone has is, can you gain muscle in a ketogenic diet?
Hell yes. I fight with people all the time on that. I understand it's not just exactly calories in versus calories out, but if you do like a cyclical keto diet or you find what works for you, keto can definitely work. Keto has been sustainable for me for over 5 years of everyday keto and just having a refeed meal once every 3 to 5 days. And that's only if I'm training extremely hard for 5 days straight. I'm like, okay, then I might need to refeed meal slightly. But keto, honestly, it's a lifestyle. I don't think of it as a diet. And most people are like, it's a great diet to go on. By the time you're actually, for the average person, by the time you're actually into ketosis, most of them actually hop right out of the keto diet.
Right.
And you're not actually in it long enough to even see the benefits. And there's so many long-term benefits of it that actually make me a personal fan. Because I can gain lean mass, and I can actually stay satiated, and my joints don't hurt. So why would I really want to leave that too often?
That's huge. And I think a lot of people, they don't understand is that there's lots of studies on ketogenic diet being anti-inflammatory that you can gain. Now there's multiple studies. I remember when we first you and I start talking about ketogenic dieting, there were really no studies in athletes. And I remember presenting in like academic field, and scientists were so angry.
They were coming after us a lot.
They were coming after us a lot, you know. Which one reason why I left academics is like people are they're mean and they're always competing and stuff like that.
It wasn't a positive space.
It wasn't a positive space at all. But the thing is that like you clearly can gain muscle in a ketogenic diet, and there's studies that show it's anti-inflammatory, which gives you a long-term career. So what does keto look like for you? What's a day look like if you're trying to gain size on a ketogenic diet?
Okay, this is going to sound very unhealthy, but if you guys look at my blood work, it's fine. So I usually try to eat about 18 to 20 eggs in the morning with about a half a cup of heavy whipping cream, and then a quarter pound of bacon. And then lunch is usually a chicken and some salad, and then a
snack. A whole chicken?
Yeah, like the whole chickens you buy at like your grocery store,
those
little $5 chickens.
Right, those are great.
Because those aren't even real sized chickens if you think about it. That's like a little baby hen.
Right.
Anything that weighs under 4 pounds isn't really a meal. So then, like, if you guys ever see me eat on anything else, you'll understand this. And I eat usually like 7,000 to 10,000 calories. And I'm still not huge. Why can't I be like Ben Pawlowski's size or Phil Heath? But that's a normal day. And then I'll have like probably a 2-pound like T-bone and some veggies. And also then you got to do your coconut oil, your protein shakes, your supplements, your creatine, your Bohemian breast milk, and duck eggs.
That's great.
The last two, if you don't know about it, then don't worry about it.
He's joking. Because there's a lot of people who are watching. We're going to go look that up and start taking them.
Shout out to Michael Hearn.
That's great, man. That's fantastic. So, yeah, so 15 to 20 eggs in the morning. A cart. What? How much heavy cream?
I try to do like a cup of heavy whipping cream in the morning with like some either coconut oil or MCT oil. But it takes me a while if you go out of ketosis to actually be able to digest the MCT oil and coconut oil, because it gives you an upset stomach. Right, I think that's a nice way.
For sure.
Why am I even making anything PG-13 after all the crap I just said?
Yeah, it destroys your stomach. Yeah, I remember first time when we were doing Project Mass, we had a whole carton of heavy cream. You know, most bodybuilders had a carton of milk. You had a whole carton of heavy cream. Hey, it's a great mass builder,
It's great,
right?
and it goes great with the shakes. Protein it's fat soluble, so it mixes up very well with protein shakes.
That sounds like a great protein shake.
And it gives you so many extra calories, because sometimes it's hard to eat enough. And I know a lot of people. I was very, very small and skinny when I was growing up, and it was hard for me to eat. And still sometimes it's hard for me to eat, so I like to be able to drink some of my calories. So if I could drink an extra 1,000 or 2,000 calories and I don't have to make myself so full that I can't move, perfect.
That's awesome. So now when you transition from like bulking to cutting, what are some techniques that you use?
Fork downs. Yeah, eat a little less.
Okay, I got you.
My main technique is just understanding your body. If you look at like old school Sean Ray, he didn't have a nutrition plan or anything going into it. He just looked at his body. He's like, okay, if I'm a little too fluffy, eat less carbs. And that's kind of like the way I look at my body sometimes. It's not a 110% complete science once the years go on. Once you understand the kind of base of where you're at, it's just, okay, I'm a little fluffier. Let me cut down on the protein and cut down on the fats and kind of see how my body responds. Most people think they can just make a calculation, their body just instantly adapts to it, and that's just not how my body responds. So I just kind of see where it kind of wants to go. Because sometimes I can take more protein, and if it wants to grow, I just kind of just let it grow. And if it's not going into the shred mode, it's not a necessary cut, then I just don't. But if I'm really serious, go high into keto and start running. A little cardio never hurt anybody.
Gotcha.
But it hurts your joints.
Oh yeah, 100%. So like when you do add cardio in, like what's your duration look like?
Sprints only. I love sprints or truck pulls.
Wow.
So like either I'll do like 10 by 10s on sprints, so 10-second sprints with a 30-second break in between. and it ends up usually being like a 50 to 100-yard sprints depending on how tired you are, or grabbing, if you guys have a friend that has like a semi truck or Jeep and you got a little vest, throw that on and start pulling that damn thing for about 200 to 300 feet.
Right. Yeah, no, most people ask about cardio, the elliptical, stationary bike. Lawrence, truck pulls.
I just don't like the stationary. It's so boring to me because I'm not the type of person that can jog outside. I don't like long jogs and things of that nature. I can do a bike ride, but what's the point of just sitting there on a Stairmaster over and over? So monotonous. And I think that's going to make you hate training and not look forward to the actual struggle of what you're doing. So if I don't look forward to it, then I'm just not going to do it.
Well, I think, and a lot of times when bodybuilders transition from bulking to cutting, they, especially near the end, they lose so much size. And part of that's the long duration cardio, right? I mean, look, if someone is doing long duration cardio because they're training for a marathon, for a 5K, I think that's great, because if you're going to be good at a marathon, you got to run a marathon.
Right.
But if someone's trying to get good cardiovascular health and get shredded, it's probably not the ideal method for them.
No, it's just what's the purpose? I think that's you hit it right on the head. What is the purpose of what you're training for? I think a lot of people don't understand the purpose of what they're even training for. Are you sculpting your body? Are you trying to get stronger? Are you trying to get your cardiovascular health better? Are you trying to run further? Everything I train for is usually specific. Like if I'm training to do a power lifting meet, then I'm going to do mostly heavy powerlifting things for a few weeks. I'm never trained for cardio, so that'd just be a lie. But if I'm training for a bodybuilding show, then everything's more isometric movements. I'm really just focusing on the squeeze and pulling out striations. And if you're doing multiple things like that throughout the year, then it kind of compounds each other, and you're never really staying in one spot and only training one way. And that's why I like to compete in multiple things, so my body's always ready to do almost anything.
That's great. That's good. So I think that gives a good point. Another one of your like training techniques that you use is you're training in so many multiple different areas. And I think muscle's so complex that we talk about, you know, your classic book says, your classic textbook, train 8 to 12 repetitions. It's the same static
What
thing.
happens if you train 13?
Right,
Nobody has 13 on their own shit.
Exactly right. But you're doing all sorts of stuff, and so you're constantly keeping your muscles growing, and I think that's huge.
I remember years back, there was always debates on like, should you train as a power lifter? Should you train as a bodybuilder and CrossFit? And they all had such negative things. Like each group said so many negative things about each other, but there's so much positive from training in every way. CrossFitters, great endurance. Now they might not have the best physique, some of them, but some of them do. Powerlifters the same way. Like there's so many great things about every way. Powerlifters, yeah, a little bit bulkier, but strong as hell. CrossFitters, a little bit more endurance, but boxy physiques. Bodybuilders, big, but not strong and no endurance. So why wouldn't you want to incorporate all of them and kind of turn into a superhero?
That's true. Exactly right. That's great.
I'm not a superhero, by the way. I proved that multiple times. I'm not that strong.
So, I mean, this is all phenomenal stuff. What about, like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, like, you know, what supplements, what are your basic supplements that you just recommend? For someone's like, I just want to gain muscle, your top, like, 3 to 5 supplements that you would want to take.
I think everyone needs to take some type of protein shake. It doesn't have to be whey. I prefer whey. But you can go with like a vegan protein because they're making those complete now by adding EAAs and BCAAs to them. My second thing would definitely be creatine because most people don't get enough from the meat and their actual nutrition. So I think creatine is definitely number 2. And number 3, nutrition-wise, probably electrolytes. Surprisingly enough, I don't think enough people take them and they don't understand the benefits of actually being hydrated during the workout.
Oh, wow. That's a really good point talking about hydration, because most studies show most people walking into the gym are dehydrated. And the thing is, like, a little bit of electrolyte can give you a huge pump, and that's what people miss on ketogenic dieting. Sometimes they go, oh, I'm losing my pump, but maybe it's just because they're not getting the electrolytes that they should consume. Because
a lot of people on keto, they're like, oh, I have a headache. Well, you don't have any electrolytes. You probably ate no salads or nothing green or anything with minerals inside their diet. Keto is great, but most people think, oh, it's just meat and fats. No, you need your vegetables and some nuts as well. You need some fiber inside your diet to help you process the protein, to help you regulate a lot of things inside your body. And most people don't think of their micronutrients. They only think of their macros. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss.
That's very true. So, you know, again, like I've met a lot of bodybuilders, and they're like I said, sometimes they're not fun to be around, especially when they're prepping for a contest, and they shut everything else off in life, and you know they don't have a social life. What do you do? Are you able to balance like your social life with your training life, and if so, how?
Yes, I think just because you're training, that's only part of your life. I think a lot of people use it as an excuse to be an asshole, to be a dick. Like, oh, I haven't ate. You chose this lifestyle. You chose to do this. So whatever I choose in life, I'm not going to be angry about the choice. Oh, you can't eat popcorn and cake or XYZ around me. Yes, you can. I should have the willpower because this is a goal of mine and it's not a goal of yours. And I shouldn't have to shun you or be mean to you to prove my point. Like usually when I'm getting ready for a show, no one even knows. Because what's the point of like, oh, I can't eat this, I can't eat that, or trying to make the world validate what you're doing and make you feel better means nothing to me.
Interesting.
And I think that's what a lot of people want to do. It's like, oh, well, since I'm dieting, I need to do this. Or it's a mood amplifier as well. It kind of can show the true effects of certain people. Then they're not actually hiding their emotions anymore because they don't have the food as a comfort. And me, I try to wake up as a happy person. I wake up, meditate, do yoga, and just every morning say 3 things I'm blessed about.
Oh, that's great.
No matter where I am, that's the first thing.
Wow.
Why am I happy to wake up? Because you can always be in a worse place, but you can always be better too. So just say the little things that you're grateful for. You might be in the lowest point of your life, but there has to be something that you're happy for. You're happy to wake up. You're happy to breathe and have opportunity to make yourself better that day.
That's awesome, man. Well, I gotta tell you, Lawrence, like talking to you about your training, like your dieting, how you conduct yourself like as an athlete, an entrepreneur, businessman, has just been tremendous, and we're super happy that you came up to ASPI to visit us. Sweet. And we got a lot of cool things that we're going to be doing together.
I'm super excited. Sorry I got the meat sweats on your podcast. I know it's probably messing up like the whole glistening effect, but you guys fed me so well that I tried to eat a buffet here.
That's great, man. That's great. So talk about real quick before we go. People want to follow you and
wait, we forgot one thing though, Doc.
What's that?
What's my ASPI score?
That's right. We gotta do ASPI score.
You beat the hell out of me for 4 hours and now you want to tell me what I got?
We did. So I have the results here. So guys, listen. For those of you guys who don't know like the ASPI score, right? Lawrence came here to do his ASPI score, okay? And he crushed it. He blew it out of the water. So yeah, so we get a lot of great guys who are coming through here. And the ASPI score, like when you come to ASPI, basically we put you through a series of tests. Everyone wants to be in their prime. Like everybody wants to be in their prime. Mm-hmm. But what is it? So we found out how to quantify that. And it was crazy. So we took Lawrence through a series of brutal and by the way, this is after Lawrence went through a lot yesterday. That
doesn't count. Today was a lot more rough. You guys made me run.
Yeah, we did. We made Lawrence run. It was incredible. So we go through. We're going to take you through each of these tests, and I'll kind of explain it to people who are on the screen, right?
Okay.
So the thing is that the ASPI score, again, it's about people's prime. So when you look at people's prime, what does that mean? Like it's a state of being, right? Mm-hmm. People want to be in their prime. They want to feel in their prime. They feel at their best. They feel like they're ready to rip through and tear through anything. So what we do is when we look at the score, we say, what is that associated with? It's body composition is a part of that. We just spent a long time just talking about body composition. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of other aspects to that, right? So the first part of the score, like I said, is body composition. It's scored from 0 to 100. Now, 100% is the best that you can get. And
I never got 100 on anything.
Not surprisingly, Lawrence did get 100%. Okay, so as far as like, being the ultimate like male, like
ultimate athlete,
Lawrence got 100%. So Lawrence has close to 90 kilograms of lean mass or muscle mass on his body, which is a lot. That's like 190, almost 190 pounds of like solid
yes,
muscle.
And I haven't trained in a year. Let's do this.
Exactly. So there's a lot. So when Lawrence talking to me,
yeah, you guys don't know this. I haven't worked out in any at 2020.
He haven't worked out in 2020.
But we're starting today.
But and by the way, when Lawrence comes back, he's gonna put on like 30 to 50 pounds.
Yeah, we're trying to gain as much mass as possible in the next 8 weeks. So we're gonna document it and then come back and track it. Yep. In 8 weeks, so middle of November.
And so you guys will see all of it. But also, we're going to be, that program that you're doing, we're going to be developing a program. So you guys who are watching this can gain size too.
You guys will find it on Doc's channel.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd ask you how you got that body composition, in general, but through the years of training, clear like how you've done a lot of the techniques that you talked about. So now, and this is at a body weight of like 220 pounds. So super lean guy overall. So now, the next thing that we looked at was like your overall strength. But we put Lawrence in a static position. He's pulling, basically doing an isometric deadlift, near full extension, right? And his strength was actually really high. Now what we do is we calculate that we do a calculation, and you pulled a lot of weight. In fact, like your score was like 98, you scored a 98 out of 100 on your strength.
Sweet.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting when you're pulling is you talked about like, because you pulled near like quite a bit of weight, and if you were, if you look at like a deadlift, maybe a normal guy, you talked about like being able to deadlift like 450 or 500, let's say, and you probably could deadlift more, but you talk about being able to deadlift 400 for 20 reps. Well, like, so that's a big part of bodybuilding, again, is looking like your endurance. So you have a good, strong amount of strength, but your ability to sustain it is really high.
Sweet.
Yeah. So now, if we look at your cardiovascular health, we talked about that earlier, but like your blood pressure was outstanding. Like your systolic was 114/68.
Sweet.
And I talked to Charlie, and look, Charlie's one of the smartest individuals I possibly know.
I know. I picked up a lot of jewels from him already.
He's getting ready to be Dr. Ottinger, and like he's just crushing it, right? But the thing he told me was, just looking at you, you think someone with your much mass would have like a higher blood pressure in general, but you have this phenomenal blood pressure and your arteries are working so well, and I think it goes back to a lot of the things that you were doing, and so that's fantastic. Your metabolic score, what you got, we look at that with something called Hemoglobin A1c. It's your Hemoglobin A1c is basically looking at how much glucose basically sticks to your basically blood vessels, right? Particularly like your red blood cells, actually. And your metabolic score was at 80%, which is great, especially because you've been off season, you still have 80%. I do
no cardio. I will take that.
Which is amazing. But the thing is, what you guys want to know is we looked at hemoglobin A1c. His hemoglobin A1c was a 5.7, which I think is strong. But as you do keto, that's going to even get better. And so that's interesting to look at. So when we look overall at like your cognitive score, you actually scored great on your cognitive score. You had 96%.
Man, I'm not doing too bad.
You got 96% on your on your cognitive score. You got 100% on your cardiovascular score.
What?
Yeah, you got 100% on cardiovascular, which is your systolic blood pressure.
Okay.
Diastolic blood pressure. Now we have a measure that measures actually super accurate, a lot more than normal blood pressure. In fact, it can back calculate and look at like your aortic blood pressure, like the blood pressure coming out of your arteries.
So that's why I had to lay down for it. That makes sense. That's why I
had to lay down for it. Exactly right. Now, the endurance score was this is where you had to run.
That knocked down my whole ASPE score from a 90 to a 12.
Yeah. So now Lawrence is close to superhuman as you're gonna get, right? You know what I mean?
Think of me as the Hulk. I can't do any cardio.
Yeah, he's the Hulk. So exactly. So your endurance score, you got about like a VO2 max of 42. Now, listen.
A Jew.
42.
Oh, woman.
42 means you work out, right?
I can walk up 3 flights of stairs.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you got a 66 on your endurance score.
That sounds about right, though.
Right, but it all makes sense because everything's specificity.
D's make degrees. Everybody knows that.
D's make degrees. I had a guy who actually he got into his he was playing golf and he had a scholarship for golf. But he told me, like, I was teaching in class and stuff like that, and he goes, "Hey, look, he got a D in he had D in the class." I was like, "Hey, man, I want to get you up. We got to get your score up." He goes, "Look, man, that's a 68%. D is for diploma, right? He was thrilled, man. He was excited when he saw the score.
Classes are hard, though.
yeah, he's like, shit, I'm 8 points above what I need to be. I'm going to,
I got some room to slack off.
But yeah, so I think so. But it's interesting because, like, so your total ASPE score to be in your prime, we say is 85%.
Okay.
When you got 80, and by the way, we barely had anyone ever reach that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the highest score we've ever seen is 86%.
Okay.
Okay, and you got an 87. So
almost an A. We're coming back for an A.
Yeah. So no, well, with the prime, that's an A. That means you're in your prime. So
we want to be an extreme prime, elite prime, Navy SEAL prime.
Navy SEAL prime, yeah. So we've never had anyone go above it. We've never had anybody go above 90. But
in 8 weeks you will.
In 8 weeks we will. In 8 weeks we will. So now here's the interesting thing about the ASPE score is this. It actually shows, like, the ASPE score actually shows that you're actually like 8 years younger physiologically than you are chronologically.
Oh, so it matches up my mentality too.
Exactly.
Okay, I got you.
Exactly. It actually shows that you're like in your prime age, like the ultimate age that you could actually be in, you hit. Right?
Okay.
So you peak actually, like your peak age actually in life is like 25, is when everyone peaks in. And that's what your ASPE.
So like most athletes.
Exactly.
Because you're basically out of your prime in your 30s.
Yeah.
They're like, you're about time to retire now.
Yeah. Chronologically, people say that. But, biologically, you actually are performing like you're 25.
I think my cousin might be James Harrison. Like, there we go. We're over here beasting it later in life.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's the cool thing about the ASPE score is we know how people perform across lifespan. And so that's how you're performing. So congratulations on that.
That's so cool that you can actually track your peak performance. So as you get older, you kind of know where you need to improve or kind of where you would like to stay as long as possible.
Exactly.
So I don't mind getting older if I can stay here forever. I'm like, cool. I would gladly be 50 and be like, yeah, my ASPE score is 87 still.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Really, that's the thing. Like, people get older. I know people who are 30 who are like their biological age is like they're 50.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And vice versa.
I wonder what Mike Tyson is now since he started training again. Since he looks like a beast, we should get him here.
We should get him in here. We should definitely get Mike.
I know his manager. We should contact. Like, that's not a joke. We should contact him and see.
Get him in here.
That would
be great.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, get him in here.
And then we can have him fight somebody here.
We should get him to fight someone here. Maybe Charlie.
Charlie, that'd be awesome.
Charlie volunteers.
Because I am not taking a punch from Mike Tyson.
No, man. I just remember the thing is I've never seen a boxer who was in his prime more dominant, more scary, more terrifying than Mike Tyson. I've never seen someone destroy his opponents
with a body blow.
Like Mike Tyson. And even in the video game, Mike Tyson's punch out.
You couldn't even beat that without a cheat code.
You couldn't beat it without a cheat code. Like the first minute, one hit knocked you out. But anyway, if you guys haven't played that game, it was one of the greatest boxing games of all time. But Lawrence, we're so happy that you came here. We're so
glad to come.
Thank you, man. We really appreciate it. First off, for people who want to follow you, I highly recommend following you. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to get better positive attitude. You're going to learn about training. You'll learn about how to be an entrepreneur. How do they follow you and on what platforms?
You can follow me on every platform. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and then if anything new comes out, I'm going to do that too. Yeah. But it's always just my name, Lawrence Ballenger, and just keep it simple.
I just learned about TikTok. Paul just taught me about TikTok.
Don't do a TikTok dance, though. That's my only thing. We're too old to be doing TikTok dances.
Yeah. I'm not on TikTok, but I've never, Paul just explained me, took a very scientific approach, but
transitions, that's all that matters.
He taught me about transitions, so I'm definitely going to check you out on TikTok too. But thank you so much, Lawrence, for coming. I really appreciate it, man.
Anytime, buddy. It's been a blast.
Thanks, man. All right.
You did good.
Great.